Okay, hi there. So I've been listening to a lot of pundits lately talking about the 2020 election and whether Trump is going to win, what the prospects are. And I have my own opinions on this. First, let me just start up right off the bat and say Trump is going to win in 2020. I'll tell you why I believe this. Well, first of all, I've been observing closely every presidential election since 1972. So I voted in every one. And I've come to a lot of conclusions. Plus, I also worked. I had the privilege, not too many people get this opportunity, to actually work on a presidential campaign. So I worked on Bill Clinton's campaign, and I was in Little Rock, Arkansas from June until November working on that campaign. I was on the issue staff. But that was an inside look. Now, of course, with time, every election changes. But there are certain things I've observed. And I'm going to focus my comments today on things I haven't heard talk about, hence this video. So first, let me just mention this. Most of the time, what determines whether an incumbent gets reelected, in fact, I actually can't think of a counterexample to this, is the economy doing well? That's huge. That's the number one reason that an incumbent gets reelected. And the other has to do with war or issues regarding war. Usually an incumbent during a war, if there's a war going on, will be reelected. So when those two things in that issue, those issues are going well, the incumbent definitely has the advantage. So we saw this with the re-election of Ronald Reagan in 1984, Bill Clinton in 1996, and George W. Bush in 2004. Despite the fact that all those three, like Trump today, faced determined and highly motivated opposition from the other side. So I've heard some people say, let's talk about Trump now. I mean, people I would consider serious people. Will he step down? Maybe he should step down. Will he run again? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Being president is the ultimate prize. Why would he give that up? So when someone makes that suggestion, even a Republican Republican-leaning, makes that suggestion, the only thing I can think of is projection. Like they would think, well, I've accomplished this. If I were in that position, why not just go play golf and relax and enjoy life? Because frankly, that's what most of us want to do. We do want to relax and enjoy life, the pressures. But Trump loves this. I mean, you just watch him in action. That guy, I mean, if he was getting tired of it, he could slow down a little bit. But he doesn't. I've never seen that kind of energy in a president. Just one thing right after another. And he seems to have infinite energy for this sort of thing. So there's no way he would not run. Let's just wipe that off the table. I'd also like to add a quick word about Romney. Apparently, he thinks that if something happened to Trump, I don't see what would happen to Trump, but like if it was a health issue or something like that he wants to position himself so he could step in and be the nominee in 2020. Well, I'm sorry, forget it. In my mind, he's a traitor to the Republican Party, especially for writing that gratuitous editorial in the Washington Post bashing our president. I mean, there's no way I would support, and I have to believe that a lot of others feel the way I do, that I would support the likes of someone like him to take the place of Trump if Trump had to, for some reason, step down. It would have to be someone else, someone who's a loyal member of the Republican team. Okay, so let's talk about Trump and the primary reasons I think he will win. And the main one is that Trump's negatives are already out there. And that's not true for any putative Democratic nominee. You have to understand, a president, well, you don't have to understand, everybody knows this. When you run as a president, it is incredibly horrible in terms of negative attacks that one has to go through and your family has to go through. I don't think, as I look at the potential cast of Democratic candidates, I don't think they realize what they're getting themselves into. And let's think about, what are the negatives about Trump now, not when he ran before? What are the biggest complaints about Trump? For the most part, it's not his actual policies, which have been very good for this country. The thing I keep hearing over and over again is that he's a liar. He's a thug. Well, he's not a liar to me. He's not a thug to me. So this is just a personal dislike that a lot of people on the left have. Plain and simple. But that's not enough to run against. That's just enough to rile you that you just don't like this guy. So he's a known quantity. I was listening to a YouTube video the other day where somebody, this was before the election, where somebody talked about FUBAR. And FUBAR is effed up beyond all recognition. And FUBAR was real before the 2016 election. People really didn't know what Trump was going to do, or if he had the skills to be a good president. He seemed a little bit out of control. I had some concerns along those lines, but they faded as the election progressed. What overrode FUBAR in the minds of a lot of people was the failings of the Democratic nominee. A lot of people simply could not stand Hillary Clinton. I had grown to not like her, but I did not like her policies. And also, I felt at that time that she was seriously ill with some kind of neurological problem, and that it was being covered up. So it's really impossible at this point to judge Trump's prospects without knowing who the Democratic opposition, the Democratic candidate will be. First, let me make some general points, or general points that I've observed. Since the time of JFK and LBJ in the 60s, it is now hard for a Democratic nominee to win. Now, we did have Jimmy Carter win in 1976, but it was a pretty close election, as I recall. But he was seen as highly moral, and he really played that up. And it really was a reaction to Nixon and Watergate, and the fact that Ford had never actually been elected to the presidency. I mean, he was appointed when Spiro Agnew had to step down as Nixon's vice president, and so Gerald Ford was selected or picked to be the vice president and unelected. And then when Nixon resigned, Ford became the president. And Ford bungled a lot of things. Like, he didn't know that. I remember during some debate with Carter, he didn't know that East Europe was under Soviet domination. I mean, the Warsaw Pact countries were under Soviet domination. So he tripped, he did things like that. So he wasn't a strong incumbent, let's put it that way. But Jimmy Carter didn't last long. He was a Democrat. He didn't last long. One term. Now, Bill Clinton, on the other hand, he was a different kind of Democrat. That's why I got so excited about him. Because I realized as I look back, I had, even though I was a Democrat, I was like a pro-business, a more centrist kind of Democrat. I didn't like people breaking the law. I didn't like, well, I would consider myself a centrist, pragmatic Democrat at the time. So I was very excited by Bill Clinton's message. And I was an early supporter of his. And that's what kind of gave me an in to eventually working on his campaign. I mean, there was a whole slew of Democratic nominees. And when I heard him, I thought, that's it. Of course, we had to go through the whole Jennifer Flowers thing and that he hadn't served in Vietnam. I mean, it was a really rough couple months for him to get the nomination. But he finally did. And then I went to Little Rock and worked on it there. Although I had been working on it earlier, that's a long story. Anyway. So, because remember that prior to Bill Clinton, the previous Democratic nominees were Walter Mondale in 1984 and George Dukakis in 1988. But they were just too liberal. I mean, a liberal Democrat, I've come to the conclusion, cannot get elected president of these United States. It can't. Until after Bill Clinton, Barack Obama came along. But I consider Barack Obama a one-off. He was tall, confident, unflappable, and he projected strength, unity, and healing for our country. And he had that deep, authoritative male voice, gave great speeches. That kind of bugged me as a woman. That sort of bothered me. It's like, really? So he gives great speeches. So he has this deep male voice. Because that kind of irked me at the time because as a Democrat, I was supporting Hillary Clinton. By the way, Hillary Clinton was a lot better in 2008 than she ever was in 2016. I mean, she was much healthier. She was more vibrant. She was less lefty. Okay. So it kind of bothered me that he was winning against Hillary Clinton because of his deep male voice or whatever he was doing. But then once he got the nomination, I got fully behind it. And I thought it was pretty cool that we could have a black person become president of the United States of America. I think, and you could even hear it in some of the Republicans after he got elected, just saying, says a lot about our country. It was just amazing. But he did not come off as a lefty at that time. I mean, first of all, you could hear earlier speeches. They've been playing a lot on Fox News and other places where he would talk about the need for border security and we shouldn't have illegal immigrants. They need to follow the law, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I went with my husband to an international coal conference in Pittsburgh in October of 2012. So this was even after his first term. And the speaker said, wow, isn't it great that both presidential candidates, which were Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, are such big supporters of coal? So he was saying very strong things about coal and jobs and all that, which went away completely once he was reelected. So with all that's gone on, because I hear some commentators say, well, the Democratic Party, they have to run somebody with their identity politics. They have to run somebody who's a woman, a minority, or whatever. They just have to. They can't run another white guy. But I don't think that's true anymore. Because we've had a woman, Hillary Clinton, be a major nominee for president of the United States. So as far as little girls thinking about being president someday, I mean, they can think about that. I mean, it's doable. Just because she didn't win, she came very close to winning. So, yeah, any person of color, any minority can also think that because of Barack Obama winning. So in my mind, we've been there, done that. We don't have anything that we have to keep proving on that score. Well, how do you like that? I'm missing one of my papers. Here it is. Sorry. Gotta get organized. Okay. So, we can't, as I said earlier, we can't judge who's going to win without considering those terms. So let me talk about some of the few people who have been talked about as potential nominees. One of them is Joe Biden. Now, to tell you the truth, that's just because he has high name recognition. Because he first ran in 1988. So I've been seeing him around for a long, long time. And at that time, he had to pull out of the race due to charges of plagiarism, serious charges. He had put in his speech some exact words from somebody in Great Britain that had run for office. But even back then, he never had widespread appeal, ever. And this was when he was younger, healthier, and far more attractive than he is today. So most of his negatives have been sidestepped. He's been able to stay out of the negative space by just being, Obama's vice president. But let me tell you, there is plenty of footage out there about him being creepy. I mean, I'm pretty easygoing about guys, whatever, touching you, giving you a hug. But he goes way off the charts. He's downright creepy, the way he touches women. And, you just play a couple of those things and it turns your stomach. Seriously, it turns my stomach. And I am really easygoing on that score. That's not a big deal for me. But he's creepy. And he consistently puts his foot in his mouth. So that will happen over and over again if he were involved in a campaign. And here's another one. One of the best things Obama did during his presidency was go after Osama bin Laden and get him. But when they were figuring out, and Obama had his advisors around him, Joe Biden advised against doing the raid. Okay? Bad call. That would come back to haunt him. Also, he's not decisive enough. Oh my God, should I run? Should I not run? Enough already. So you look at his age. I mean, he's had several cancer treatments, scares, whatever. His appeal would evaporate very, very quickly. So I can definitely write off Joe Biden. Okay, we've heard a lot about Elizabeth Warren lately. Now, here's a thought about women running for office. I think you have to have a certain skill set, which, by the way, Elizabeth Warren does not have. I've done a lot of work in my time trying to get more women elected to office, to public office. And this is what I've seen. Women are perceived as leaders when they project strength and resolve. Frankly, Hillary Clinton did that. I mean, whatever you could say about her, nobody, except maybe in 2016 because of her health problems, but let's say in 2008, nobody thought of her as weak. They may not have liked her, but nobody thought of her as weak. And I'm convinced when you look at really good female leaders, they project strength. and resolve. So let's look at Elizabeth Warren. She projects none of those things. I'll talk about Kamala Harris in a minute, but she does project, I think, some strength and resolve. Okay, so it's been well documented, so I won't go into this, that she seems fake, you know, with this whole DNA ancestry, and that she was Native American, and she looks silly trying to drink that beer. I mean, okay, we know about that. But here's the biggest thing. Not the biggest, but one of the big things, aside from her policies. Forget about the policies for now, because the Democratic Party is pretty left, so they could still get someone as their nominee, even if the policies, in my view, are pretty bad. But she is too frail looking. She hunches over. She looks like a frail older woman, like your nice grandmother who has osteoporosis. I don't know if she has osteoporosis, but she looks like it. I mean, I feel like I could knock her over with a feather. And you know, these are all gut feelings. Like, do you really want this person being in charge, protecting us? No, you want somebody that appears strong. Oh my God, and she needs good posture and some muscles, you know, like mine. Okay, I'm gonna show off here. See? Well, okay, there. Anyway, she needs some good muscle. And I noticed her voice is weak. You gotta have, like Barack Obama with his deep voice. I mean, you've gotta have a strong voice. So as I look over the Democratic field, all the others are lightweights. Okay? And so there's two otherwise attractive, I mean, they are attractive candidates. I say attractive, not just in the looks way, but just attractive that you think at first glance in how they speak. Senator Kamala Harris, but she's not been exposed to negative publicity. There's some weird stuff going on about how she originally, sexual innuendo kind of stuff. I don't need to get into it, but that will be damaging if she runs and gets up there. She'll be attacked for that. And there's a guy, Julian, I don't know how you pronounce it, Julian Castro, the former mayor of San Antonio and Secretary of HUD under Barack Obama. He's attractive, but he's trying to do the Obama thing without being in the Senate. He's written a book, and I read an excerpt from the book, and he just talked about, he was actually just promoting illegal immigration. That would not go over. And he's trying to do the Obama thing, about his family and this and that. I just don't think that plays right now. But he looks good, but he's got a weak resume. Now, in the case of Beto O'Rourke, I haven't heard him speak. But here's the problem. He's not a winner. That makes a big difference in politics, whether you have won an election. I remember I first got involved in a campaign when Dianne Feinstein, who was, by the way, a very strong female candidate. I mean, she was very strong at that time. In 1990, she ran for governor of California. Now, the Democratic Party at that time was not at all organized, and I'm sorry to say I contributed funds and I helped the Democratic Party get the party organized in California. So that we did better starting in 1992. But she ran for governor against Pete Wilson, a moderate, kind of boring Republican. And no big negatives, and she lost. Not by much, but she lost. And it was thought that a lot of people didn't register to vote, a lot of the Democrats, they didn't get out the vote, et cetera, et cetera. So I was very involved in the women's community of Democratic women trying to get elected at the time. So then I remember shortly after that, I went to some event. And Ann Richards, who had just won as governor of Texas, and she only served one term. She later lost to George W. Bush. But she won probably, I mean, she was a pretty interesting character. She had always had funny things to say. She was witty. But she had a horrible, I can't remember what the guy's name, something like Perry comes to mind, but whatever. But he had said some really horrible things about women that just really took him off the table. And so she won. So, you know, I was attached to Dianne Feinstein, you know, emotionally attached. So I was offended at this event. Dianne Feinstein was sitting in the audience, as I was. I mean, it was just a small group of women. And Ann Richards got up, and she was talking to Dianne Feinstein, kind of lecturing her about what you have to do to win an election. And I thought, you only won because you had such a terrible opponent. How dare you lecture Dianne Feinstein, who ran a great campaign, and it was the Democratic Party in California that was just messed up. But I realized that it was because Ann Richards had won and Dianne Feinstein had lost, and that's what mattered. So when I look at Beto O'Rourke, I'm thinking, he didn't win. Now, you could give yourself all kinds of reasons why he didn't win, but that makes a difference to people. He's not seen as a winner. Period. Okay, Bernie Sanders. I think his moment has passed. The kids are on to newer candidates. Okay. So as you look at all these, what I consider to be very weak candidates with not a lot of good experience, I know, at least for myself, I want a strong president that can fight for our country and its people and knows how to do it. Won't get rolled over by those people who think, no, you have to do this, you have to do that. I just can't imagine any of those candidates. I'd feel very uncomfortable having them negotiate a trade deal with China. I'd feel very uncomfortable having them try to deal with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. God, it makes me nervous just to think about it. And so I'm thinking, if I think that, there's probably a lot of other Americans who feel the same way. And then I'm thinking, who in the business community would support the increasingly leftist Democratic Party platform? With more regulations? I mean, Trump has gotten rid of a ton of regulations. Higher taxes, not just personal taxes, but corporate taxes, business taxes, whatever. And, this is a big one for me, higher energy costs. Oh my God, I mean, those renewable energy policies. Okay, bad news. So the business community, I mean, really, when you get right down to it, it's a self-interest thing. You may think, I don't really like Trump's style, but do you want one of these other people who are just gonna really do the FUBAR thing? Okay, and then as far as American people, what would happen to the jobless numbers? The Trump economy has created so many jobs. Not to mention, I mean, this is not a minor thing, not to mention the stock market. It shot up. It shot up after Trump won the election. So you may say, oh God, there's so many people that hate Trump. Don't I know it? I'm surrounded by people. In the canyon area that I live in here, in Southern California, somebody did a tie, 12%. Only 12% of the people voted for Trump. So I am surrounded by leftists, liberals. But it's the Electoral College that counts. So all the people in California could hate Trump. Not that all the people do, but they could. It won't matter. Okay? It's a winner-take-all state. So Hillary Clinton got all of those Electoral College votes. Period. So let's say New York, that will go for the other candidate. It's really a numbers game, and that's one that Trump plays very, very well. He knew it wasn't about the popular vote. He strategically went to the correct states and won. He's just smarter than the rest of them. And here's another thing I'd like to mention. I noticed this when I was in politics and involved in that. These people that are running, these Democratic candidates, what happens is you have a cadre of supporters, and they love you. They urge you to run. I mean, I even had people when I was doing this, oh, Deborah, you should run, you should run. And I realized they all get that. And you get kind of this feedback from people that, oh, you'll be great, you'll be great. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win in the whole country. You can get a kind of blind spot, and maybe that's the only way people can ever get themselves to run. But just because they have some support doesn't mean they'll have enough support. So in closing, let me say that in the end, why would people want to take a chance on someone else who might screw things up when things are going so well right now? It's not going to happen, folks. The incumbent always has the advantage, especially this incumbent who really knows how to wage a good fight. So enjoy the ride, but don't worry. Just get out to vote when the time comes, and Trump will win in 2020. Thanks for listening.